everyone. I am about to introduce to you author Danielle Teller. And look at her book. Is that crazy? Oh, this book came out in May and I couldn't wait to read it. First of all, I love these pages like this. It's like my favorite. But I loved it. As soon as I saw the cover, I'm like, I have to read this book. And then I looked at what it's about. And that's kind of what covers do for us. But anyway, here to talk with us about her book is Danielle. Hi, everyone. I am so excited because I'm speaking with author Danielle Teller, and we are talking about her debut novel, which is this book. Look at how beautiful all the ever afters. Danielle, when I saw this book, somebody showed it on Instagram, and I was like, I don't even know what it's about. I'm reading that book. And they say don't judge the book, but I'm sorry. We just do. I saw this cover, and I'm like, I don't even care what it's about. I'm reading the book.
They did a fabulous job with the cover, I have to say.
Yeah, and I've had this laying around, like, because I carry it with me recently, and I like looking at it, and I'm like, the detail, I don't think I can even pick up the detail that is in this book and on this book cover. And, after you're reading it, I'll just, like, close it and look at it again, like, geez, they did such an amazing, for a debut novel, which I cannot believe. I looked, I'm like, is this her debut novel? Why can't I find any other novels? I can't believe it. This book is like poetry in a novel. Like, it is so well written. I could not believe it was your debut book.
Thank you. I'm blushing now.
Okay, so I'm going to read. I love picking out parts of the book, and this is what got me. Because for all of you out there who don't know what this is about, I'm going to read this paragraph, and then you'll know what it's about. Because it sums it up. It's in the prologue. It's the last paragraph of the prologue. And it's you say, I do not set out to write the princess's history, but my own, the only tale I have the authority to tell. My quill may resurrect ghosts to keep me company during the long days at the castle, and if it cannot, at least my mind will be occupied and my hands busy. As for fables about good and evil and songs about glass slippers, I shall leave those to the minstrels. They can invent their own tales about Cinderella. And I was like, oh my God, I love that paragraph, and that is your writing. Your writing is amazing. It's like, I don't know, like I said, it's like poetry to me. It's like it could have been right to the point, but the whole paragraph was just so beautiful, and I loved every word of it, every word of that book.
That makes me so happy.
I know. I try not to say too much, and I actually make myself promises that I'm not going to tell you 1,000 times how much I love the book, but it happens, and, I just have to tell you, and especially when I find an author that it's their debut novel, and to tell you how much fun it was to read her story. But what everybody wants to know is how did you think of her story?
Well, it was because I became a stepmom myself. And like most people, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about what it would be to be a stepmom before I got put in that position. You don't grow up thinking, oh, I'll be a stepmother when I grow up.
I think I'll be a stepmom when I grow up.
Yeah. So I was a little surprised at how difficult the relationship can be. There were challenges that I hadn't anticipated. And, I think the biggest one is that, especially in a situation like mine, where I'm a stepmom because of divorce, not because of a death, there are already two loving parents in these children's lives. And so they're not really looking for a third parent. And especially when you come in like I did, I had have two of my own kids. And so I came in with my own sort of set of rules and expectations as a parent, which were not the same as what my stepkids grew up with. And so, things that my children would interpret as loving, like if I say, no, you can't have that cookie, they'd be like, well, mom loves us and she wants us to eat healthy. If the other kid's mom doesn't do that, then they can see the same behavior as mean or, mean-spirited. So there was that. And then the other thing that I hadn't really thought about is that it takes time to develop a bond. That, when you have your own babies, nature takes care of that for you. You almost always have this immediate feeling of like, I will protect these little beings forever. And they're helpless and they need you. So you sort of have that instant bond. But then when a child is older and doesn't really know you very well, and you don't know them very well, it takes time. And so without that soothing layer of gauze, as it were, like of affection, then all of the little points of friction in the relationship, which you have with, even as a biological parent, you have lots of friction with children, but at least you have that love that softens everything. And it just takes a bit longer in a step parent relationship for that to work itself out.
It's so interesting because I did not know that about you. I didn't know that you were a stepmom but I have a boyfriend. Okay. But I have 6 children. He has 2, but they're all I have older children, but my younger ones and his children are the same age. And boy, who knew? Okay. Who knew that could be such a huge part of like trying to figure out like you said, like about cookie, like anything, like, I don't let my children do that. I don't let, but I really think that families are going to be our generation on. This is what families look like. I mean, this is more normal than not normal anymore. And it's going to be more so, I think, especially I have children that don't want to get married. Marriage is going to be redefined in a weird way too, and, anyway, so I'm really happy that you said that because I love my I don't call them my stepchildren because we're not married, but we've been together a long time and I consider them my stepchildren and I love them a lot, but we've gone through things and they do have a mom, like they have a mom who's a very big part of their life. And it's like, you don't want to you want to be their friend. You don't want to be their mom, and you don't even know what it's like. Nobody, like you said, nobody tells you this is what it's supposed to look like. This is how you have to act. But I do think that, it's going to get more normal. I really do. I think it'll become a more normal situation, or at least they see that we're trying to work it out,
Yeah.
That's, so I was thinking about what's interesting is that, so when I'm reading this book, I was thinking about like the whole stepmom thing and thinking about her story. But I love the way you did her story. Because whoever thought about it? I never thought about it. And I love that you took this fairy tale and then gave it a whole other like branch off of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I tried to make it so that it wasn't in opposition to the fairy tale.
Right.
The part that you read, I think, describes what I was trying to do with the book,
yes.
which is, because I love fairy tales.
Right.
So I wanted to keep the fairy tale side by side with the novel. So it tells the backstory, but it's also almost like the fairy tale was inspired by true life events. And so you get to read about the true life events, but you can still enjoy the fairy tale for what it is.
Absolutely. I did too. And, I do love, I was like, what a great concept, because I love fairy tales. We grew up on fairy tales, and you love them. And it's like, you don't want to touch that, but like, what if we do look at her part, because of who we knew she was then? What if we look at her as she was growing up and her story? And so where did you start with it? Like initially, like when you decided to make her, like, how did you come up with how you were going to portray her?
So my challenge was I really needed for her to be an empathetic character. Yes. But I also needed for her not to be this fantastic stepmom, because that would completely destroy the story, right? So she has to be not a very good stepmom in some ways, but also hold the sympathies of the reader. And so the way I conceived of it, I wanted her to have a real core of integrity. She lies and she cheats and does bad things, but I think she is a character with integrity that readers can get behind. And then I also conceived of her relationship with the Cinderella character as being really sort of mismatched. And for that, I was inspired actually by something that a colleague told me years ago. She has a son who has obsessive compulsive disorder, and her husband also has OCD. And she was telling me about how it's so much easier for her husband to parent that particular child. She said, if we go to the zoo as a family and the child gets a wet sock, then he needs to go home and change it immediately. And she'll try to talk him out of it and say, let's be reasonable. We can't drag the whole family back from the zoo just because you're And her husband will say, well, no, of course, a wet sock is completely intolerable. We must go home right away, because he really empathizes. He really understands, because he experiences the world in some of the same ways. And it caused me to think about how we have different connections with different children, even as a biological parent. There's some children that you sort of intrinsically understand them and their motivations better than others. And so the way I wanted to set it up was that the stepmother character has a more natural connection with her own two biological daughters, the ugly stepsisters, but that Cinderella, although many people love her and she's not a bad child by any means, that she's really different, and that they don't it's hard for the stepmother to feel that same bond with her, right. And as a way to sort of explain how the events unfold.
Yeah, well, and you must be thrilled with, I saw all your reviews. People are loving this book. It's only been out a couple of weeks, and I was going through them on Goodreads and on Amazon. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen so many reviews for a book that just came out. So I just have to tell you that. I mean, it's incredible. Were you shocked?
Yes. In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way.
We're enjoying it. Well, because, the process of getting a book out into the world is such a long and sometimes painful process full of rejection. And so when you find an audience, it feels like a miracle.
And it's, okay, so I just want to show people, because this isn't, okay, the cover's beautiful. It has these pages. I love that you did that with these pages. Right, it has such an old feel. And look at I don't know if you see on Instagram, if you're even on Instagram, but people make art with this, okay? Like these books. And I saw some great art. I wish I could do it, okay? Every time I see one of those pictures, I'm like, I should make Instagram pictures like that, but I can't, because I'm just not that artistic. But people are having so much fun with this book and the cover, and I hope you're on there, that you get to enjoy it, because...
Oh my gosh, the best one I saw was a manicure that's based on...
Did you ever see... What's her name?
It was gorgeous. It was amazing.
I know. What is that woman's name? Jen? Is her name Jen? I think her name's Jen. But I saw her, and I have every author I talk to, I'm like, you have to find her account, because she does the nails, and I bet if you request her, so I have to, I'm going to look back, because I didn't know she did this book, but I'm going to definitely look, because you see it, I scroll through fast, so it's like, but yeah, isn't she amazing? I don't even know how she does it. I have no idea how she does it.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. It was really mind-blowing.
Yeah, right. But I did see that you have another book out. It's not fiction. You wrote it with your husband, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of what we were talking about. So it's like perfect, except for it was like, it's called Sacred, and then it's like cows and vows. Like you can't. So what was the cows? What did that mean?
So that book is very different. It's nonfiction.
Right.
And it was really inspired by both of our experiences with divorce. When we started talking about it, we realized that there were a lot of ideas that we had in our heads, but that are really sort of social tropes that don't necessarily make a ton of sense when you really examine them in the light of logic. And it didn't seem like other people were talking about this in books or anywhere else. And so my husband said, let's write a book. And I said, you're nuts. And he said, no, seriously, let's do it. So we did. And it was cathartic and interesting. Actually, the research that I had to do for the book was really interesting. But each sacred cow is one aspect of our social attitude around marriage and divorce. So the idea of true love, or the idea that people who stay married are inevitably or invariably selfless, whereas people who get divorced are selfish, and just sort of picking apart these ideas that we don't spend a lot of time thinking about.
And I would love to read it, because I wish I would have seen it before today, because I would have read it. But we talk about it all the time now that, people my age are getting, in our 50s, and we're finding ourselves divorced and with children and grandchildren and whatever. But the thing that, like you say, you don't grow up to be a stepmom. You also don't think as a little kid, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to get divorced. Okay.
Exactly.
And now I see, like, you'll see on Facebook couples celebrating 25 years, 30 years of marriage. And it, there's a little part of me that's like, you failed. You failed. Like there's that little voice, like you failed. You didn't do it. You didn't
Mm-hmm.
do that. The thing that we were supposed to do, we didn't
Yeah.
do. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part. I'm sorry, what?
So that's one of the cows.
That's one of the cows.
Voice. That's society telling you this. Yeah.
Yeah, that somehow you failed because you didn't do the right thing as part. So I love that, the selfish, because I never really looked at it like that, but I guess I do think that way, you know, that there's a part of me that's more selfish, or, you know, that I couldn't do it because why couldn't I, you know, like what did I do? And you know, as my children get older, they even have questions, you know, because they're getting into marriages or not getting into marriage or deciding not to. You know, some of them are like, I don't want to get married because you're married. You know, you couldn't do it. So, you know, and then we have to deal with the children. Do you deal with the children in that too? Like how to talk to the children?
It's not a self-help book. It's much more, again, just about these ideas and picking them apart. There is a chapter on children, and it's certainly by far the most controversial in the book, because one of the sacred cows we talk about is the innocent victim cow. We actually have all these really wonderful cartoons. A friend of mine is a professional illustrator, and she did amazing little cow cartoons for us. But the innocent victim cow is this idea that science shows that when parents divorce, that children do worse. And, you know, this idea that there's objective evidence. And so I actually did a lot of reading and research and talking to people in the field. And it turns out, I mean, we don't know that they don't do worse, but it turns out the science just isn't there. That we just really don't know, because we don't have the kind of scientific studies that would actually answer that question. So that's one of our chapters.
Yeah, because I did always think that. So it must have been society telling me, you know,
Yes.
that somehow my children are scarred. You know, even the older children, the children that were in their 20s when it happened, like they're somehow, you know, and I think they feel that way too, because I think people tell them that too, you know.
Yeah, and it's really so harmful. In what universe is that helpful? You know, to tell the child of divorced parents, oh, you're going to be messed up.
I know.
You know? That is just not helpful in any way.
Well, and children come up with these cliches because they hear their friends that have divorced, you know, like, well, it's not my fault. You know, like if he forgets something over at his dad's house or something, I'll be like, oh, did you forget? Well, it's not my fault that I have two houses that I have to remember, you know, and I'll be like, oh, okay, right. It's not your
Yeah. Actually, what might think about more is people who will say, you know, that's what they're doing for vacation. And they'll say, well, I'm going with my dad to do this and my mom to do that. And then the reaction they get is, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's like, why are you sorry? I'm getting two different vacations. Like, I'm not sorry. Right. But this idea that they're pitied when they don't feel like they're at all disadvantaged.
Yeah, I've always tried to make them feel like they're so lucky, you know? Like when they do, like, yeah, you're right. You do have two houses. How many people get two bedrooms? How many people?
Yeah. So but that's sure what we got the most pushback against is people saying, no, it does destroy children. I'm just telling you, there's no evidence that.
There's no. Well, I like to hear that, and I'm telling you, as soon as we hang up, I'm going over and I'm buying it. So definitely gonna buy it. But anyway, so you've got this one. This came out a couple of weeks ago. What are you working on now?
So now I'm working on another novel manuscript, and it's pretty different. This one is set in 2003 in Toronto, which was the summer of the big blackout. I don't know if you remember the big Northeastern blackout, but Toronto was caught up in that as well. And the story was inspired by the poem "The Love Song of Jilted Prufrock" by T.S. Eliot, which is, the poem is narrated by this character who's a middle-aged, you assume he's a middle-aged man, who has he's come to this crisis decision in his life, and he knows ahead of time that he's going to chicken out because he's got this very comfortable life. You know, he's living the good life. He knows he'll get social censure. So he's already kind of mad at himself that he knows he's not going to have the courage to do it. And so I have the Prufrock character in the novel is a woman in her 60s who's getting ready to celebrate her mother's 90th birthday party. And she's always lived her life with this feeling that the world is a scary place and that she has to follow all of these social rules in order not to have terrible consequences. And she has a daughter-in-law who is making very different choices in her life. She's leaving her marriage to be with another woman. And so the story through flashbacks and so on, it follows these the two women are separated in time because one's much older than the other, but they have these very parallel life experiences in many ways. And then they sort of converge partway through when the younger one says, I'm leaving my marriage, and the older one gets really upset about it, naturally. And so then their paths diverge. And then during the period of the blackout, the reason I said it then was people who I know, I have family members who were living in Toronto at the time, and they said that it was actually this kind of wonderful experience for a lot of people because it brought communities together. So there were block parties, people dragged out their barbecues onto the street and had big, community barbecues, and people got to know their neighbors because they didn't have air conditioning. So they all came out and sat on the stoop at night and got talking to their neighbor. And so I just conceived of that as this woman, the older woman, who's been sort of clenched for this blow her whole life. In the moment where you expect rioting and expect society to fall to pieces, actually everybody behaves in this very civilized way, and that provides the sort of ground for her to have an epiphany about her own life. So that was very long-winded, but
that's okay. You know what? Only in Toronto, because in New York City it doesn't happen like that. but in Toronto, I can picture it.
Yeah, well, I mean, in New York, it must have just been so terrifying after 9/11. I mean, I can't even imagine how terrifying that must have been.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, I can't wait to read it. Do you have a time? Like, are you right in the middle of writing it, or?
I'm in revision now, so I don't really know what the timeline will be, but it's I don't know, 80% of the way there, so
oh my gosh.
Hopefully not too much longer.
You have to find me, okay? Because I want to read it. Okay. I love your writing. I cannot stress enough, guys, get this book, because the writing, you're just going to fall in love with the words. And the way you tell a story is just so unique. And I read a lot of books, and I just had to tell you that. It's very unique, and it kept me turning the pages. So it was a beautiful story, and I am so happy that I got it. And I'm going to be giving this book away when this video is posted, so I can't wait to do that. But everyone, all of your links, all of Danielle's links will be listed underneath here, along with the link to go get the book. Just press it takes you right to Amazon, and you can buy it already. So I feel so blessed that I got to read this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So anyway, you know where to find me, and we won't say goodbye because I want to read your next book. So.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, everyone. I love talking to her. Oh my God. You know what? I didn't even realize how much more story was behind this story, and it made it even richer. And I hope that I have convinced you to go buy this book. I really do. I hope I've convinced you, and I can't wait to give it away. I'll be giving it away on Instagram, and I'll have my link listed underneath here. So everyone, anywhere you can find Danielle, it will be down there. And thank you, Danielle, and thank you for letting me read this. Bye.